Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Talking March Madness. I am your host, Miguel Mike Medina. This is Avery Jones. We're back at it once again. Avery, how's it going?
It's going great, Miguel. March Madness has started off great, and I think it can only get better from here, and it's going to be a wild ride.
Can you believe what Furman and Princeton did yesterday?
Actually, as many people want to say they're surprised, we shouldn't be surprised. Virginia has had it tough the past few years, but I think that's kind of how any college player wants to finish a game. I mean, with a three-pointer at the buzzer, they knock out Virginia. And Princeton was just staying in the game the entire time for Arizona, and it was just crushing them. And because they were keeping it close, I think that took Arizona's confidence down a little bit. But we shouldn't be surprised by these lower seeds, taking out some of the heavy contenders when it comes to the NCAA championship. It's a surprise for many, especially on the first day, but we shouldn't be surprised. Upsets are going to happen. Upsets are going to happen.
Now one but two already in the first round.
Exactly. And we still have games today, so it could happen again.
Ugh, I can't wait. Princeton in the last 4 minutes, they were absolutely locked in. And it kind of looked like Arizona. I don't want to say this about Arizona, but it kind of looked like Princeton had him shook in those last 4 minutes. So, but wow, what a phenomenal game. Furman, that young man will never forget this moment. So,
No.
but what an amazing start to March Madness. But let's go to the first one that we're gonna be talking about, and that is Howard versus Kansas. Look, this is a complete mismatchup because first of all, shout out to Howard, you know, and first NCAA tournament since 1992. A lot of famous people have come out of that institution. So it's one of the greatest universities. So, but when you go up against the defending champs, chances are slim. But I understand it's March Madness, anything can happen. But you're talking to the defending champs. So I knew that ending the first half, I give credit to Howard, they hung in that first half. But the way that first half ended, which Kansas went on a 19-5 run, I knew it was not going to be pretty as soon as the second half was about to start. And that's exactly what happened. The Jayhawks dominated the second half. Howard, they struggle offensively. They kept turning the ball over. They turned the ball over 9 times in the first half. They did it 9 times again in the second half. So in total, they had 18 turnovers. But Kansas, they shot very well from the field compared to Howard. And Kansas made the free throws, something that Howard struggled from the beginning.
You're right, Miguel. Even when you have kind of these Cinderella stories like Howard making it to the dance after 31 years, you hope they somehow get locked in, right at the tip. But you're right. As a defending champion, even last year, Kansas wanted to prove themselves. And even this tournament, Kansas still needs to prove themselves. So even as a number one seed, they know they have to come out and dominate. And of course, after the first half, Howard was only down by 13, which really isn't too much. But you're right, Kansas going on that absolute tear in the last 5 minutes or so kind of took the mental game out of Howard, which they tried to start at the beginning, but like you said, Kansas just was just locked in too much. And Howard had to take the fall. But otherwise, Howard need, we need to look at the bigger picture of it. When teams make the tournament, that is in itself a win, especially if a school hasn't been there for a while. You're already helping your institution get their name on the map. So possibly other student athletes will want to travel or at least visit that institution and say, hey, how can I make this team better? How can we as a team be better that we can go back to a tournament and say, oh, we're ranked 16. All right, who are we playing? All right, let's do this. Or we can make our program better and we can go in with an absolute, great seed and still have a shot, even if others say otherwise. So Howard, it's disappointing for Howard, especially once the ending score was, I think it was about 32, nearly 32. But still, they should be proud. Any school winning a tournament to get into the big dance is a win. Howard, they need to hold their heads high and know that there's still work to do, but still it's their programs on the map. And especially as a HBCU, I think it's definitely a win for other student athletes for that school.
I agree. I hope that Bison builds from this. I hope this is not a one-time thing. So if I'm Howard Bison, I would continue, try to get better as a team, recruit recruit more players to come and play for their program. So, but congratulations on a successful year for Howard. As for Kansas, they will be playing the winner of number 8 seed Arkansas or the number 9 seed Illinois. So we'll be tuning in for that. Let's go to the next one. Auburn versus Iowa. So Avery, in this game, Auburn and Iowa, they kept it very close in the first half. In the second half, you saw Auburn just going on a tear. But I give credit to Iowa because they kept trying to come back and come back and come back. But Auburn just kept pulling away, pulling away, pulling away. So it was like a close but no cigar kind of second half for Iowa. But one thing I say about Iowa is that had they made their shots, their 3-point shots in the first half, we could have probably had a different conversation by now, or probably would have had a better game because they went 0 for 9 from downtown in the first half. Meanwhile, in the second half, they had more than 5. I think they finished with 7 or 8, if I remember correctly. But Auburn had 6 players who scored 10 or more points in this game. And I feel like one of the secret weapons for Auburn was Trey Donaldson. He played 13 minutes, but he made the most of it. He scored 11 points and went 3 for 3 from downtown. And this mostly happened in the second half. So that was huge for Auburn. You had Johnny Broom, who led Auburn with 19 points, 12 rebounds, and blocked 5 shots. This was just an impressive performance by Auburn. Give credit to Iowa, they never quit, especially when they were getting blown out in the second half. But those 3-point shots were helping them. And Auburn, they just put their foot on the gas and came away with the victory.
You're right. The one thing that's interesting about the tournament is these 8 and 9 seeded games can be so close. They don't seem like, an upset special, if you will, but they can just be so close and so entertaining. So for Auburn and Iowa to have a very close game. And you're right, the game was close all the way out, especially right after the first half. Especially it was a low scoring half. But I think the point that you put on is when they had 6 players with 10 points or more. You can have a great starting five, but if your bench doesn't have the depth to, when their numbers called, to make the free throws, to make that 3-point shot, to consistently, put pressure on the other team, it's not going to work. You're just going to tire out your players, and the mental aspect of your players is going to deplete the entire game. So definitely give credit to Auburn for having a lot of depth, in comparison with their starting five. Iowa, you're right. They were close, but like you say, they weren't close enough. But like anything, they can take this as, okay, what do we need to make our program better? Do we need more depth? How is our core working right now? But like I said, when it comes to Howard, their program has competed at a high level, that where the school is getting the notoriety where other student athletes can say, hey, I want to play for that coach. I want to play for that school. So, Iowa made a point, because one thing I do enjoy about March Madness, especially in conjunction with college football, you could have a great college football program, and sometimes their college basketball program kind of gets frowned upon or looked down upon. But when you have great sports programs out of school, it just makes your student athletes want to participate more. So, definitely credit to Auburn, definitely credit to Iowa. It was a great game. I don't think the score dictates what it was. Auburn winning by 8. It seemed like it should have been they won by 2 or 3, but it was a back and forth game. Iowa kept it close, but Auburn just pulled away when they needed to.
We got to talk about today's matchups. So NC State versus Creighton. NC State have been heavily criticized because many feel that they didn't deserve to be in this tournament. Why? They lost 3 times this season to Clemson. So Clemson is not in the tournament, but NC State is in the tournament. But NC State, they're going to be shorthanded because they're dealing with injuries. As for Creighton, I feel that out of the 2 teams, they're the better defensive team. Ryan Kalkbrenner is one of the most efficient scoring big men that you're seeing in college basketball. So I believe that Creighton's big men will give a lot of problems in the paint. So NC State is going to have a lot of work cut out for them dealing with those big men. I just feel that NC State, them being shorthanded and not having enough firepower in the front court will be a little too much for them. But I'll still say it's March Madness. Anything can happen. But I have Creighton winning this game by at least 7 points.
Miguel, I'm going to agree with you. I actually had the fortunate opportunity to visit Creighton a couple years ago when I went to Kansas. And it's interesting. The school is literally smack dab in the middle of Omaha, of the city of Omaha. You wouldn't notice it unless you knew what you were looking for. And the fact that I found the school and I was familiar with the school was really great. So to know where the school is and knowing that they've entered this tournament, especially as a 2 seed, you're correct. They're favored by 5. And right now, ESPN is predicting them with a 74% chance of victory. I do agree with you when it comes to NC State. How did they get in this tournament? Their record in the ACC was 12-8. And now, granted, they have less wins than Creatine, but still, it's it does look odd for many for NC State to be in this tournament, versus, instead of Clemson. So I see this to be a close game, but, NC State is going to want to prove their doubters. And I see it being close probably in the first half, but I see Creatine getting locked in. And, like you said, Ryan Cocklebrenner, he's really good on the free throw line. He averages about 15 points a game. So I see him making an impact when needed. But I think, like the Auburn, Iowa game, it could come down to the bench. So whoever has the greatest bench depth, that could be the key. And this game starts at 4. So what a great afternoon to start Friday than watching this matchup. And since it's an 11-6 matchup, since we've had upsets, some people will probably be looking at this game very critically. But I agree with you. I see Creatine taking it. I'm going to say by 4. I'm going to say it's going to be close, but I see Creatine pulling away probably at the end, maybe in the last 5 minutes.
And this team, not only they're a good defensive team, but they're a team that takes really good care of the ball. And they also allow the third fewest free throw attempts in the country. So that's something to look out for. But let's go to the next one, Providence versus Kentucky. Now, Providence, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Kentucky won 3 of their last 5. Those 2 games that they lost were against Vanderbilt. Kentucky can torture Providence if they can out-rebound them. So, but I feel that Kentucky, John Calipari in Kentucky, they have to stay away from another first-round loss. They have to. So I've always respected this Kentucky program, but they need to handle their business against Providence. So I have Kentucky winning this game by at least 12 points.
I think that's a bit conservative for this game. You're right. Kentucky is a storied basketball program, like North Carolina, like Duke, like NC State. So they definitely want to prove themselves. Again, it's an 11-6 matchup. So Providence probably has probably a bit of an edge, knowing that upsets have already happened and their school can be put on the map, if they take out, a big dog, as you say, with Kentucky. But you're right, Coach Campari, he's gonna keep his athletes locked in control. And one thing they don't want to do is get lost in the beginning and then have to come from behind. So if the game is close between Providence and Kentucky, later Kentucky can pull away and then Providence will have to catch up. But if it's the reverse, if Providence starts out quickly and Kentucky has to keep catching up, I think that could be detrimental to Kentucky and trying to stay in the game. ESPN has Kentucky by about 4 points trying to win, and their percentage is about 63%. I think that's very conservative for a matchup like this, but I see Kentucky keeping it close. I think Kentucky could pull this out by about 4 points. There's something about a team knowing that others don't think they can win that can make it harder for another team. So I see Providence kind of staying in the game, but Kentucky leading the way. But if Providence gets out of the gate quickly, it's going to be real tough for Kentucky. And again, it's your bench. Your bench has to be in. They have to be locked in. If they're not locked in, it's not going to work. So I see this being a fairly close game, but Kentucky kind of just squeaking out to keep their team in the dance.
And this Kentucky team, they've had an up and down kind of season. Their longest winning streak this season has been 4. So, but I still have confidence in this team to be able to beat Providence. Providence does have a chance. I feel like Kentucky shouldn't take them lightly. They shouldn't take any team lightly. Kentucky hasn't won a tournament game since 2019. So hopefully that all changes today. So I'll be looking forward to that. Now, last but not least, and this matchup excites me. There's something about this matchup that really excites me, and that's GCU versus Gonzaga. Both teams ended the season hot, especially GCU. They've won 6 straight to make it to the tournament. And that's something that even Gonzaga's Razier Bolton, he said in the press conference that they've been paying attention to GCU. This team is not to be taken lightly, and it's gonna be interesting to watch. But according to Coach Mark Few, he said that Gonzaga has gotten tougher. They got more physical, so I'll be looking forward to that. Number 3 versus number 14 seed. So there's just something about this game that tells me it might be a good one. It might be a good one. But GCU, they have really good guards. That's something that Gonzaga knows. So Gonzaga's job on defense is to slow down that backcourt.
You're right, Miguel. This being a 14 versus 3 seed, and another reason when it's in prime time, that's when it gets interesting. And I do love the fact that Gonzaga is familiar with Grand Canyon's game, GC's game. So it kind of lets GC know, okay, they know what to expect. They're not going to take us lightly. When respect is earned, it is earned, and they will want to make sure they play the best game they can be. ESPN has Gonzaga by 87 points, which is as an 87% chance to win, which is really high. And Grand Canyon probably knows that, but they are going to want to play their best game that they can be. Just like anything, when you get to the dance, it is one and done, but you have that chance. Look at Furman. They got their chance. They got their chance. So Grand Canyon knows that they can have that chance too. They do have Gonzaga winning by 15. But I think Grand Canyon can keep it close. I think Grand Canyon can keep it close, especially in the first half, but it has to be real close, probably within 2 or 3. Maybe if they take a lead at one point and keep it. But when teams get on these, 10-0 runs, these 12-0 runs, these 15-0 runs, it can just take the sails out of the team. So Grand Canyon, you're right. Their backcourt has to be strong. Their defense has to be locked in. Again, I'm gonna say it till you're probably sick of me saying it. Your bench. When your bench is called upon, they need to take their shots. They need to make their shots. If they hit the line, they have to make those free throws. We know this. We've seen it enough as being college basketball fans that free throws and 3-pointers can make or break a game. So I see this as being close. I know, odds makers, percentage makers, want to have Gonzaga just rolling over this team, but I see this being close. And if Gonzaga takes it, I say they take it by 2. And I say it's within the last 2 minutes of the game, where a run is being made and it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What better game on Friday night in prime time, knowing we have already had two upsets and we have the opportunity of having another or possibly two? Because granted, we're talking about 3 games, but there are a lot of games today that can make the first day look like a normal day. So I think this could be an interesting game. I really do think this could be an interesting game, but I see Gonzaga taking it by 2.